and you've been telling yourself it's stress, or it's a phase, or it's just you being too sensitive again. But it isn't any of those things, and somewhere underneath all the explaining you've been doing, you know that too. I'm going to say something to you that nobody in your everyday life is going to say. The heaviness you've been carrying, the strange tiredness, the way you cry at things that never used to move you, the nights you lie awake feeling like your skin doesn't fit anymore. That's not you falling apart. That's you waking up. And nobody warned you, because almost nobody around you has ever been where you are. My name is George. I've spent the better part of my life walking with people through exactly this, the moment the soul starts to stir, and the mind doesn't understand what's happening to it. I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to hand you a diagnosis. I'm here as someone who has sat with the broken open, the ones who felt like they were losing their minds, when really, they were finding their spirits. And I'm telling you, what you're going through has a name, and it has a purpose, and it has a path. Because here's what most people miss. When God starts to awaken something inside a person, really awaken it, the first thing that happens isn't peace. It's turbulence. The old self doesn't go quietly. It fights. It panics. It throws every alarm it has. And to the mind, that turbulence feels exactly like falling apart. So the person reaches for a label that makes sense in the ordinary world: anxiety, depression, burnout, and they miss the holy thing happening underneath. I want to walk you through 5 of these. 5 mental and emotional storms that come with a real spiritual awakening. Not so you can ignore your health, please. If you're struggling, talk to someone who can help you. But so you can stop being terrified of your own becoming. So you can finally understand that the ground shaking under you isn't an earthquake destroying your house. It's the foundation being relaid for something far bigger than the house you had. And stay with me to the 5th one, because the 5th one is the strangest, the hardest to explain, and the one that confirms more than any other that you are not crazy, you are crossing over. Let me start where almost everyone starts. The first challenge is the loneliness that comes out of nowhere. And I don't mean ordinary loneliness, the kind where you wish you had more friends or a phone call on a Friday night. I mean the loneliness of standing in a room full of people you love and feeling like you're behind glass. You can see them, you can hear them, you laugh at the right moments, but something in you has moved to a different room, and they can't follow you there, and they don't even know the room exists. Think about Elijah for a second. Here's a man who had just seen the impossible. Fire came down from heaven at his word. The whole crowd fell on their faces. By every measure, he had won. And then, just days later, we find him alone, under a tree in the wilderness, telling God he wanted to die. He says, "I am the only one left. I'm the only one who still sees, the only one who still burns for this, and I can't carry it anymore." That's the loneliness of awakening. It doesn't come because something went wrong. It comes because something went right. Elijah saw further than the people around him. And seeing further is a lonely thing. The higher you climb a mountain, the fewer people are standing next to you. That's not punishment. That's altitude. Maybe you've felt it at your own kitchen table. Your family is talking about the same things they always talk about: the bills, the neighbors, the show everyone's watching, and you love them. But inside you're aching, because none of it touches the thing that's actually happening to you. And you can't bring it up, because how do you explain that your whole sense of reality is being rearranged? So you stay quiet, you smile, and you carry it alone. Here's what I need you to hear. God did not bring you up the mountain to abandon you on it. Elijah felt alone, but he wasn't. The same voice that called him up there was about to whisper to him that there were 7,000 others he never knew about. You feel like the only one. You are not the only one. You're just early. And the early ones always feel alone before they find each other. The second challenge is the fear that you're going backward. This one is cruel, because it usually comes right after a season where you felt close to God. You had the breakthrough. You had the clarity. You finally felt like you understood your life. And then, without warning, the floor drops out. The presence you felt goes silent. The peace you had evaporates. And the voice in your head says, "See, you imagined the whole thing. You were never chosen. You were just having a good week." I want you to think about the children of Israel walking out of Egypt. They had just seen the sea split open, walls of water on either side. They walked across on dry ground, while the most powerful army on earth drowned behind them. You would think a person never doubts again after seeing that. And yet 3 days later, 3 days, they're standing at bitter water, complaining, terrified, certain God had brought them out there to let them die. How does that happen? How do you see the sea part and lose your faith in 72 hours? Because deliverance isn't the same as transformation. God can get you out of Egypt in a night. Getting Egypt out of you takes the wilderness. And the wilderness always feels like going backward to a heart that thinks the destination should come quickly. You are not going backward. The silence you're in right now isn't God leaving. It's God working at a depth that doesn't make noise on the surface. The seed that's growing the most is the one buried in the dark, where you can't see a single thing happening. Stop measuring your awakening by how it feels on a Tuesday afternoon. The dry seasons are doing more in you than the mountaintop ever did. And here's something I've watched again and again. The people who break through are almost never the ones who never doubted. They're the ones who kept walking while they doubted. Israel made it to the promised land, not because they had perfect faith, but because they kept putting one foot in front of the other through the part that felt like nothing was happening. The third challenge is the sensitivity that suddenly feels like too much. You walk into a room and you feel the tension before anyone says a word. Someone's energy drains you, and you can't explain why. The news, the noise, the crowds, things that used to roll off you now sit on your chest for days. You start to wonder if something's wrong with you, because everyone else seems fine, and you feel everything. Nothing is wrong with you. Your perception is being sharpened, and sharp things cut deeper before you learn to handle them. Look at David with his harp. Before he was a king, before he was a warrior, he was a boy alone on the hills with the sheep, and he felt everything. He felt the heavens declaring the glory of God when everyone else just saw a sky. He felt his own failures so deeply he wrote them down, and we still read them 3,000 years later. The same sensitivity that let him write, "The Lord is my shepherd," is the same sensitivity that left him weeping on his bed at night. You don't get the Psalms without the tears. They came from the same place. That's the deal with a tender heart. The same openness that lets you feel God's presence so vividly is the openness that lets the world in too. You can't have one without the other. The instrument that plays the most beautiful music is also the most fragile, and God is not asking you to become numb. He's asking you to learn what to do with all that you feel, to bring it to Him, instead of letting it bury you. Maybe you've sat in your car after work, just sitting there, because you needed 5 minutes before you could walk into your own house and be okay for everyone else. Maybe you felt someone's pain so strongly it became your own, and you couldn't shake it. That's not weakness. That's a heart being prepared to carry things most hearts can't carry. But it has to be trained. And the training feels, at first, like drowning. Here's the turn. The sensitivity that feels like a curse right now is being forged into your greatest gift. The most healing people you will ever meet are people who feel deeply. They walk into a room and others breathe easier, and they don't even know why. That's where you're headed. But the gift comes through a season where you feel raw and exposed. And you have to trust that the rawness is temporary and the gift is permanent. I want to pause here because something is happening as you listen to this. You're recognizing yourself. And that recognition is not an accident. There are messages that pass through your eyes, and there are messages that pass through your spirit. If something in you recognized itself while watching, don't dismiss it. That is the spirit confirming what was already written. The secret protocol carries 7 keys that unveil what heaven deposited in you before you ever arrived, things no one around you has ever been able to name. It comes with the full audiobook for your moments of prayer, silence, and encounter with God. And you also receive the Awakening Map, the guide that illuminates the 5 seasons of spiritual awakening, revealing with precision exactly where you are and what comes next. The link is pinned in the first comment, but only for a limited time. Don't let this moment pass without a response. I tell you that not to sell you something, but because I have watched too many people stand right at the edge of their breakthrough and walk away because no one handed them the map. I had to find this the hard way, through years I wouldn't wish on anyone. You don't have to. The path is already drawn. You just have to take the next step. Now let me bring you to the 4th challenge, because this one catches people completely off guard. The 4th challenge is grief for a life that was never actually good for you. This is one of the strangest things about awakening. You start to outgrow things, relationships, habits, a way of living that used to feel like home, and instead of feeling free, you feel grief. Real grief. You mourn the version of you that fit in. You mourn the friendships that only worked when you stayed small. You mourn the comfort of not knowing what you now know. And you feel guilty for grieving it, because part of you knows it was holding you back. Think about Naomi. She lost so much that she told the people who'd known her whole life to stop calling her by her name. "Call me bitter," she said. "Don't call me Naomi anymore, because the woman who had that name is gone." She was grieving not just the people she lost, but the entire life she thought she was going to have. The future she'd built in her mind was buried, and she didn't yet know that a new one was already walking beside her, in the form of a young woman named Ruth, who refused to leave her side. That's what this grief is. You're standing in the space between the life you're leaving and the life you can't quite see yet. And in that in-between, all you can feel is what's gone. The new thing hasn't arrived in a form you can hold. So you grieve. And people who love you don't understand why you're sad when, from the outside, your life looks like it's getting better. Let yourself grieve it. That's what I want to tell you. Don't rush past it, and don't feel ashamed of it. Even Jesus wept at a tomb when he already knew resurrection was 30 seconds away. Grief isn't a lack of faith. Grief is love acknowledging that something has ended. And every real awakening has endings in it. You cannot become who you're meant to be while clutching everything you used to be. Some things have to be set down. And setting them down hurts, even when they were never good for you. But watch what happens to Naomi. The woman who said, "Call me bitter," ends the story with a baby in her lap, surrounded by women telling her that her life is fuller than it ever was. The grief was real. It was also not the end. It was the doorway. And the same will be true for you. What you're mourning is making room for what you can't yet imagine. Now, number 5, the one I told you to stay for. The 5th challenge is the splitting of your timelines, the sudden, disorienting sense that the life you were on a track toward is no longer the life you're living. and you can't even remember exactly when it changed. People online give this all kinds of strange names. Timeline splits, quantum leaps, jumping realities. And I understand why those words appear, because the experience really is that dramatic. But let me tell you what's actually happening, in language that's older and truer than any of that. What you're experiencing is the moment God redirects a destiny. Here's what it feels like from the inside. You look back at where you were even a year ago, and it feels like a different person lived that life. The things you wanted then, you don't want now. The people you were tied to, you've drifted from. Sometimes without a single argument, they just belong to a road you're no longer on. You make a decision that seems small, and your whole life bends around it. You miss an opportunity you were desperate for, and a year later, you're on your knees thanking God you missed it. It's like you've stepped off one path and onto another, and the old path is still visible behind you, but there's no way back to it. You've quantum leaped, the internet would say. You've been redirected, I would say. Think about Saul on the road to Damascus. He was on a track, a clear one. He knew exactly who he was, exactly where he was going, exactly what his life was for. He was traveling that road with letters in his hand and certainty in his chest. And in a single moment, a light, a voice, the ground rushing up to meet him, that entire timeline ended. The man who got up off that road was not on the same path as the man who fell down on it. Same body, different destiny entirely. He even took a new name. Saul became Paul, because the person on the new timeline needed a new name to match. That's the leap. It's not science fiction. It's the oldest story in the book. God reaches into a life and turns it 90 degrees, and the person spends the rest of their days realizing how completely everything changed in that one encounter. And here's why it feels so much like losing your mind. Because your memory is still wired to the old timeline. You still half expect the life you were building before. You catch yourself reaching for an old version of your future, and your hand closes on nothing. Because that future isn't there anymore. It got rerouted while you were busy living. So you feel unmoored. You feel like you're grieving a life you're technically still inside of. You feel like two people, the one you were going to be, and the one you're becoming, and they haven't merged yet. Let me give you something to hold on to in that feeling. The disorientation is not a sign that something's broken. It's a sign that the redirect was real, and it was deep. Small changes don't disorient you. You don't lose your sense of reality over a haircut. You lose it when the actual trajectory of your existence has been altered, and your soul knows it before your mind can explain it. Paul spent 3 days blind after his leap. 3 days in the dark. No map, no certainty. The old life dead, and the new one not yet begun. That blindness wasn't punishment. It was the pause between timelines. And on the 3rd day, scales fell from his eyes, and he could finally see the road he was actually on. And if Paul's leap happened in a single blinding moment, I want to show you one that happened slowly, because most of ours are slow. Think about Joseph. Here was a boy with a dream, a real one, a destiny he could see so clearly he couldn't keep it to himself. He knew he was meant for something, and then his timeline shattered. His own brothers threw him in a pit and sold him to strangers. The road he thought he was on favored son. Father's pride. A life of belonging. That road ended in the bottom of a hole in the ground. He woke up the next morning in chains, on a path he never chose, heading to a country he'd never seen. And it kept happening. Just when he climbed back up, running Potiphar's whole house, trusted, rising, the floor dropped again, and he was thrown into a prison for something he didn't even do. Twice his life split. Twice the road he was building collapsed under him. And he had no way of knowing, in the pit or in the prison, that every single one of those collapses was God laying track toward a throne in Egypt that would one day save his entire family from starving. Here's the thing about Joseph I need you to sit with. At no point along the way did the redirect feel like a blessing. The pit didn't feel like provision. The prison didn't feel like promotion. He lived years believing his dreams had died, that he'd been forgotten, that the boy who once saw his future so clearly had been a fool. And the whole time, he was exactly on schedule. Every wrong turn was the right turn. Every closed door sealed him onto the only road that led where he was actually meant to go. That's what makes the timeline split so hard while you're inside it. You can't see the Egypt at the end of it. You only feel the pit. You only feel the collapse of the life you were sure you were building. But when Joseph finally stood in front of the brothers who sold him, he said the words that explain every redirect that's ever happened to a chosen one. You meant it for harm, he told them. But God meant it for good. The leap that felt like ruin was the leap that saved everyone he loved. You may be in your 3 days right now. The blindness, the in-between, the sense that the old life is gone and the new one hasn't come into focus. Don't panic in the dark. The dark is part of it. The scales are going to fall. And when they do, you're going to look back at this exact season, this confusing, frightening, lonely season, and you're going to understand that it was the hinge your whole life turned on. And remember, everything I spoke about goes deeper inside the secret protocol, pinned in the first comment. The 7 keys, the audiobook and the awakening map are there, waiting for you, whenever you're ready to take the next step. So let me bring all 5 of these together, because they're not really 5 separate things. They're 5 faces of one thing. Loneliness, the fear of going backward, the overwhelming sensitivity, the grief for an old life, and the splitting of the timelines, every one of them, is the same process wearing a different mask. They're all the old self dying, and the new self being born. And birth, in every form it takes, is painful, messy, frightening, and absolutely necessary. I want you to stop for a second and consider how differently this all reads once you know what it is. The loneliness isn't proof you're unlovable, it's altitude. The dryness isn't proof you imagined your faith, it's the seed in the dark. The sensitivity isn't proof you're weak, it's an instrument being tuned. The grief isn't proof you made a mistake, it's a doorway. And the timeline split isn't proof you're losing your mind, it's proof God reached into your life and turned it toward something you couldn't have chosen for yourself. Everything that's been scaring you was actually evidence. Not of breakdown, of breakthrough. Now I'm not going to stand here and tell you it gets easy from here, because that wouldn't be true, and you'd know it wasn't. There's more wilderness ahead. There always is. But there's a difference between wandering lost in the wilderness and walking through it, knowing it has an exit. From this moment, you walk through it knowing. You know what the loneliness means. You know what the silence is doing. You know why you feel everything. You know that the grief has a doorway on the other side of it. And you know that the strange leap you've taken isn't madness, it's a redirect with your name on it. There's a reason you made it all the way to the end of this. The people who needed to leave left a long time ago. You stayed, and you stayed because something in you was hungry for exactly this, for someone to finally tell you that you're not broken. You're becoming. Hold on to that. Whisper it to yourself on the hard nights. I am not breaking. I am becoming. Before you go, I want you to do something for me, and I want you to be specific. Out of these 5, one of them landed harder than the rest. One of them made you go, "That's me. That's exactly what I've been living. Tell me which one in the comments. Was it the loneliness? The fear of going backward? The sensitivity? The grief? Or was it number 5, the timeline split? The sense that you woke up on a road you don't remember choosing? Don't just say which number. Tell me the moment. Tell me when you felt it most, because when you put words to it, something shifts. And somebody else scrolling through these comments at 3 in the morning is going to read yours and realize they're not the only one either. That's how the early ones find each other. This channel is created without ads and without platform income. If these messages have touched your heart, strengthened your faith, or helped you during a difficult moment, and you'd like to support this work, you can use the CR code on your screen or the contribution link in the pinned comment. Thank you for walking this path with us.